You have spent a good portion of your life saving for retirement and doing all the things. And, it's low cost, it's diversified, you're saving, saving, saving. There comes a time in which the switch gets flipped and you're now in the spending phase of retirement, using those savings to put groceries in your fridge. That can be a complex shift. The tasks are much more difficult, maybe, than the savings phase. So today we're going to focus on decumulation. Our guest is Eric Monteiro. He is Sun Life's SVP of Group Retirement Services, and he joins us from Toronto. Hello, Eric.
Hi, Bruce. Thank you for having me.
So give us the very basics here on the difference between accumulation and decumulation when it comes to retirement.
For sure. So accumulation, as you mentioned, is when you're trying to invest money, save money so that you have a pot of money for when you're ready to retire. It's very important, by the way. We're going to talk more about decumulation today, but you can't decumulate what you haven't accumulated. So it's very important to start early and be consistent. And to your point, people tend to spend too much time talking about investment and returns and certainly fees, and not enough time talking about consistency and investing. As you know, I sit on the group space, and it's the magic of payroll, right? People put it on, and particularly if there's auto enrollment and auto features, and off you go, and they find out 30 years later they actually have a pretty nice pot of money. So that's accumulation. And then it comes to, okay, now I got these savings, I'm decided to retire, and I need to turn those into income. And it sounds easy, but it's actually quite complex. Why is it complex? There's a bunch of reasons and a bunch of things you have to think about. First of all, lifestyle. What's retirement going to look like? Every day is going to be a Saturday. So it's not, we have this vision that you're going to travel all the time. Well, not really, because you can only do that so much. But what is it really going to look like? Therefore, what kind of budget do you need? How much you're going to spend? What about health needs? How much you're going to spend when you're 63 or 65? Very different than when you're 95 at your earlier point. So you really have to think about that. And then how long am I going to live? How long do I want the money to last for? Which is a very complicated question to answer for most of us. And then on top of that, you have the question of how do I draw those funds in the most tax efficient way from different sources? Because you might have saved on a TFSA, on RSP, some non-registered money. How do you take that money out? And then in addition to all that, and then
in addition to the addition,
what investment strategies make sense in that context, unless you've decided all that. So it's a very complicated topic. And of course, as you know, most people don't handle complexity very well.
There's one additional element that I want to layer in here, and that is the psychology of it. So I think my temperament and my life experience and everything I've done, it is perfect for the life of a saver. Like, I am a very good saver. When I need to make that transition, I'm going to have a really hard time making that shift to not accumulating anymore, but to spending that money. What counsel do you have for people like me who anticipate that the psychological change is going to be difficult?
Yeah, for sure. And again, what we see it quite often is people underspend or overspend. And either one is not okay, right, from a bunch of reasons. So, just to give you a sense of the size of the challenge, right, we're going to have about 5 million people turn 65 years old in Canada. And in the US alone, as usual, it's a lot bigger than that. It's about 4 million people every year over the next few years are going to turn 65, so likely be at retirement age. Our vision is to really simplify retirement, right, and make it simple. Because to your point, what people do when they get into complicated things is they put it away. They don't think about it. They don't want to worry about it. And that's the worst you can do, right? Because either you overspend or you underspend, whatever your natural tendency is. Neither one is good.
What advice do you have for people on the estimate around expenses? So, probably their kids are out of the house, probably, hopefully, their mortgage is paid off. How do they come up with a number that is reasonable?
I mean, it's very hard to tell, to be honest, and each person is going to have their own decision because, again, some people want to travel, some people want goods, some people are fine just living where they are, and they live in a small town versus a big city, particularly nowadays with real estate prices as they are. It really matters where you live. So it's hard to give a general answer. What typically I like to think about is a 60 to 80% spend replacement ratio. And the reason spend is important is because traditionally in retirement, people talk about an income replacement ratio, but that really only works for a certain income range, right? Because if you're actually making a lot more money and you're saving up for retirement, you're not going to spend 80% of what you were making before retirement. You're going to spend 60% or 80% of your spend ratio. So that's typically what we tend to talk about. But again, whether you at 50 or at 90, Really depends on your situation.
What guiding principles would you offer in terms of thinking about from where to spend first? And I say that because when we look at the sources of income, people may have CPP, OAS. Maybe they've got something in a defined contribution pension. Maybe they've got a defined benefit, lower likelihood. They might have a RSP, a TFSA. Maybe they've got a non-registered account. And as you highlighted off the top, there's tax implications for that. What kind of guiding principles would you offer?
Again, each case is going to be a case. I think there are two primary things you need to think about. One of them is tax efficiency. So again, you want to start from the vehicles. If you're going to stop income right away, you want to start from the vehicles that are going to optimize that. So you might start with a tax, shelter, a tax saving, particularly, by the way, if you're in a household that one person still has an income, at which point your tax bracket is still going to be higher than it will be in a few years. And as you spend less, you're likely to also draw less and therefore likely to be in a lower tax bracket. So I'd start with the more deferred tax efficient vehicles. But again, each case is a different case. The second thing to consider is longevity. So if you've got, some form of longevity protection, whether it's a defined benefit, plan in the family or a pension, or, if you've got an annuity that you bought, et cetera, you want to take advantage of those and actually not spend that money and keep them until as far as you can. Some people have an advanced life deferred annuity, which you can also use for longevity. So that's the other principle I would keep in mind.
You mentioned there could be someone else earning an income. Are there any pitfalls that you would flag for couples who are walking this path together? So certainly lots of people in retirement are single. Lots of people in retirement are also in couples. Any things you would say on that front?
Well, again, I think this conversation needs to be had with a registered advisor, right? But I would say a few things to keep in mind. Again, one is the relative income of both, and therefore the tax bracket you're likely to be as a couple. The second one I would say is having that planning discussion on what we just talked about, which is how much are you going to spend, where are you going to spend it from, where you're going to draw it from as a couple. Because you might be making decisions that you think optimize it independently, but if you haven't actually sat down and had the discussion as a couple, you might actually be suboptimizing, both from a tax efficiency and quite frankly, also from a planning perspective. Geez, I didn't think you wanted to do that trip in the next 5 years. I thought you'd do that trip a lot later in life. It's a bucket list kind of trip. And the other person might have been misaligned. So I just say, sit down, have that conversation. If you're trying to optimize for taxes, you probably want to have an advisor with you because it is complicated. And it'll make a difference.
Yeah. You highlighted longevity. We have no idea. No one knows how long they are going to live. What we also don't know is the level of care we are going to need in that last chapter. Some people will be super healthy until the day they die and just not wake up one morning. Other people could spend years or even decades needing fairly complex care, which in Canada these days is really expensive. Yeah. How do you factor that in? How do you even come up with a number?
Yeah, again, that's part of the complexity of it. One of the things that we're trying to do, and I should take a step back and say our view for decumulation, there are really three things that we need to make easy. One is it has to be a seamless experience. Any barriers you put in, back to your point on the psychology, people put it away, they don't think about it. So it's got to be an easy way to get your money out, an easy way to plan. The second one is advice, engagement, and communication, making sure that people have at their fingertips the information they need in plain language, and also advice whenever they need it. And the third one is having solutions that work for people. And to your point on that third part is I think we have work to do as an industry. We're very excited about a product we actually just launched this week. We call it My Retirement Income, Sun Life My Retirement Income. And what it does is it allows you to calculate how much is a sustainable level of income for you to draw down. So all the complexity of how much you need, et cetera, we'll figure that out for you. We'll figure out the investment solution as well and the investment path to get you there. All you need to tell us is I want to live until 85 or 90 or 100. However, what's important about this, back to your question on health, is it gives you the flexibility. So let's say you're expecting to get, $80,000 a year in income because you put this much money in, but you find out you need to spend $100,000 on surgery and you want to do it in the US or not here, what have you. Well, you can actually do that. You can take that money out. Now, there's going to be an implication that $80,000 might become 72 because you've taken the money out. But you know that $72,000 a year is going to last you until 95 because that's what the solution is built for. So we try to simplify things and really make it easy for Canadians to get both worlds, if you will. In other words, have sustainable income they know how to predict, but at the same time have the flexibility in case something happens in life.
Many of us have kids. We have charitable causes that we feel passionate about. We have other things in which some of our assets, they may go to kids' charitable endeavors when we pass. questions would you have people think about as they do that financial plan? They could, option one, they plan to zero. So they are dead at 95 and they've got $1 in the bank account. The other would be, actually, I want to safeguard some money for kids, grandkids, insert charity. How do people come to that? Because that then kind of, you back that up the decision matrix, and it's going to change the kind of behavior and the amount of spending that you have if you want to leave a gazillion dollars to your grandchildren.
Right. I mean, so that actually last point is very important, which is, the answer is very different depending on where you're sitting from a wealth perspective, right? People who have lots of wealth are going to have a chance to leave a big estate, and they're not going to worry about that much. In fact, they're going to have the difficult decision to make on how much to leave for my kids or how much to leave for a cause, etc. Now, those people don't really need to worry too much about the accumulation, because, quite frankly, they're likely to continue to accumulate wealth even in retirement, right? The decumulation challenge, I think, is much more pressing for people who are more in the middle class. Now, they may still want to leave a legacy for sure, and even charitable causes, which may be very meaningful to them. Which is partly why products like an annuity, for example, while they work for many people, they don't work for everybody, because you're basically running your money to the ground. One of the things we try to do with My Retirement Income is, if you end up living all the way to your maturity date, the money goes, all gets spent, because that's what the product's designed for. But if you die early, then there's a bit of money left over. And we actually find it's interesting, because if you ask Canadians, how worried are you that you're going to run out of money? The answer typically is very worried. All right. The second question you can ask is, okay, what would you do to avoid that? People will say almost anything. And so would they give up a charitable donation to make sure that they don't run out of money? Probably, right? But would they love to be able to do a charitable donation or leave an estate if they actually don't run out of money? Probably. So that's what we're trying to solve for with this solution, exactly that problem.
Really interesting stuff. Eric, thank you for your time and for your insight today. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
Eric Monteiro is SVP of Group Retirement Services at Sun Life, and he was here to talk about decumulation. I'm going to say it again here. We've spent all this time talking about saving. We need to spend more time and have more of a focus on how we spend in retirement.